I'm actually surprised to see that Fluttershy had gotten 4 episodes in Season 1 where she was at least part of the main focus. Between Dragonshy, Stairmaster, Green Isn't Your Color, and now A Bird in the Hoof, Fluttershy had gotten a lot of attention when the show was just starting out. And then she only got 2 episodes during Season 2 and only 1 episode during Season 3. I really hope that the writers will not continue this downward trend. As the episode begins, we see Angel having to do charades in order to get Fluttershy to pick up on his hints. Now, this seems rather interesting to me because I thought that Fluttershy could actually understand what animals are saying to her. Like during Hurricane Fluttershy, she is getting all kinds of encouragement from the animals, and it sounds to me like she can understand all their little chirps and squeaks, and even have a conversation with them. With Angel, though, it seems he is quite intelligent for a bunny, and yet he has to do charades in order to get the message across? I may have to look into this aspect of Angel Bunny later on. And besides, the little bout of charades actually makes for a clever reference to Alice in Wonderland.
I'm late for a very important date!
Aside from that, though, there is actually a very brief moment where we see the gala dresses in Fluttershy's house. Has Fluttershy been doing work on them? In the next scene, we see Rainbow Dash asking the royal guards about what it takes to join their ranks. Yet another bit of evidence about Rainbow's dream of joining the military. Although I was a bit surprised when I noticed how much of a size difference there is between Rainbow and the royal guards here. I mean, they look about twice as big overall. I have to wonder about whether they would ever accept a normal-sized pony into the royal guard. Inside Sugar Cube Corner, we can see just how much the rest of the main 6 are struggling to keep their cool. Twilight is worried about her friends making a good impression. Rarity is so worried about getting anything on her dress that she is afraid to move. And even Applejack isn't quite sure how to act when eating. That is, except for Pinkie Pie, who is overjoyed at the amount of sugary treats there are to consume. But even with Pinkie's less than ideal manners, Princess Celestia is actually enjoying the spectacle. And even afterwards, Celestia is actually trying to have a little fun when the cakes are insisting on being overly helpful. It is easy to see that Princess Celestia is trying to keep a cheery attitude even when her subjects are trying to keep things so proper. I'm actually laughing a bit more at this episode now than I was back when I was first watching the episode. Although that may have to do with Rarity's actions more than anything else.
Stay right where you are. All I want is a clear path to the exit. Nobody move, and my dress won't get hurt. Stay back!
Now, the fact that Fluttershy takes Philomena without telling anyone is a bit puzzling, even though she talks about how she is so certain that the princess will be thrilled by the favor. I still find it a bit odd that she would be this bold considering how much everyone else seems so overly stressed about doing things just the right way when the princess is around. I can only guess that her need to care for the sick is a much more powerful driving force that overcomes her normally timid nature. Which actually tells us a little bit more about Fluttershy's character. This is another moment in the series where her need to protect and nurture others is shining through. And when that need arises, no other force in Equestria can stop her. Now, we learn at the end of this episode that Philomena is a phoenix, and thus is a nigh immortal bird. Knowing that fact and watching through this episode again, I began to notice some interesting behavior. Philomena is intentionally making things difficult for Fluttershy at practically every turn. She refuses to be comforted by Fluttershy's remedies and is trying to test Fluttershy's patience as far as it will go. It started to remind me of some of Angel Bunny's behavior. Particularly in putting your hoof down, Angel Bunny was acting overly spoiled and pushing Fluttershy's patience as far as it would go. However, in this episode, we see that Angel Bunny is actually being helpful to Fluttershy, even with nursing Philomena back to health, which actually tells us a little bit more about Angel's character. He is certainly more intelligent than most animals and even has his moments of acting spoiled. But when Fluttershy is getting stressed over something besides him, Angel actually steps up and lends a hand. This shows us that despite his less than ideal behavior in other episodes, he actually does care about Fluttershy even when she isn't paying attention to him. This is an interesting aspect to Angel's character. When Twilight arrives and finds Philomena, she immediately begins to panic. Now, Twilight has spent more time with Princess Celestia than any other member of the main 6. Perhaps even more than any other pony of the modern age, with Luna being the exception, of course. And yet Twilight seems to assume the worst when there is even the slightest chance that Celestia might be upset with Fluttershy's actions. Now, this is probably Twilight's infamous paranoia taking over in an unexpected situation, but if Twilight does ever want to be an effective leader, then she really is going to have to learn more about keeping calm in less than ideal circumstances. I have to say, though, that Twilight is really not showing herself to be the best nurturer here. She is far more concerned about fixing a problem quickly rather than figuring out what's wrong in the first place. And that's really not a good quality for a caretaker. When Philomena escapes, we get another rendition of the Benny Hill theme. They've used this music before during the Ticketmaster, but they actually made it sound a little different for this episode. It's still nice to see the MLP staff giving us some more references that only the adults would understand. When Philomena finally keels over and bursts into flames, we can see just how torn up Fluttershy is here. And the fact that Philomena was on top of the statue right next to where everyone could see her seems a bit much to me. Philomena had to have known that this was about to happen, and she actually wanted everyone to see it happen. At first I'm thinking that this is rather cruel, as Philomena would have to have known about how bursting into flames right in front of everyone would make them feel. She could have gone off somewhere to do so in private and just return as her normal self. But she wanted that kind of attention. So, considering that Philomena is Princess Celestia's favored pet, what does this tell us? Well, seeing as how Philomena is a nigh-immortal bird that is reborn every time it dies, I have to wonder just how long she has been a pet for Celestia. Years? Decades? Centuries? It certainly makes sense that Princess Celestia would want a pet that would keep for a very long time, but why choose one that seems to have this sort of personality? Well, I would guess it is because of how Celestia was acting earlier on in this same episode. Having ruled over Equestria for more than 1,000 years, it seems that Celestia has learned to keep a positive attitude by having a little fun with those who would seek to fuss over her. And it seems to me that she chose a pet that has that same characteristic as well. Out of all the episodes in Season 1, A Bird in the Hoof actually tells us more about Celestia as a character than any other episode. And we actually learn more about her not only because of her own actions, but the actions of the pet she has chosen to spend her many years with. However, we don't see Philomena in any other episodes past this point, so we don't know for certain as to whether this is normal behavior for her. But I still think that it tells us a little bit more about who Celestia is. Overall, though, I actually enjoyed this episode more than I thought I would. I did remember there not being much to enjoy here when I watched it the first time, but going through it again I began to pick up on some of the more interesting subtleties. I was also laughing at the humorous moments more than I did before. I realized that there isn't that much of a story going on, as they really had to stretch out some of the filler in order to make a full episode. And while I wouldn't call it a strong episode in Season 1, I would say that I was pleasantly surprised when I watched it again. So what do you think about A Bird in the Hoof? Does anything about this episode stand out for you? Or does it kind of fall flat when you compare it to the other episodes in the series? Do you have any thoughts about Celestia's character and the companions she chooses? I would like to hear your thoughts about A Bird in the Hoof, and here's to hoping that we can learn more about phoenixes in the future. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.